Namaskar children, good morning. I hope your test was good. You'll be receiving your marks soon. Now as you all know, we have started with the chapter number 8. In that we have completed what is reproduction. Then we discussed about the importance of variation. Okay. Before that we discussed about do organisms reproduce exact copies of the organism. We discussed that no, it is not the exact copies. If we talk about sexual reproduction, many variations are being added. If we talk about asexual reproduction, yes, few variations are being added. Then we discussed with an example of bacteria, importance of variation. Then we discussed modes of reproduction and we started with asexual mode of reproduction. Before that again we discussed about the differences between sexual and asexual mode of reproduction. In asexual mode of reproduction we discussed about fission, binary fission, multiple fission. Then we discussed about fragmentation, regeneration, budding, vegetative propagation, spore formation, right? We have discussed all this and I hope you have completed the in-text questions also, which are there on page number 133. Now today we are going to start with the sexual reproduction, why it is required, and here why it is happening, and in fact how it is happening in plants and animals. Now if we see this, bulls alone cannot produce new calves, nor can hens alone produce new chicks. In such cases, both sexes, males and females, are needed to produce new generations, right? Now what is the significance of this mode of reproduction? That is the sexual mode, okay? And what are the limitations of asexual mode that we are going to study today? Now let's come to page number 133. The creation of two new cells from one involves copying of the DNA as well as of the cellular apparatus. The DNA copying mechanism, as we have noted, cannot be absolutely accurate. That also we have discussed. Just recollect, it's just revision. That just recollect ATGC. I told you that template strand is there. This template strand or parent strand is going to, unwind, and then daughter strands are going to be synthesized. So here DNA copying is not 100% accurate. It is having certain errors, and these errors will lead to mutation. The DNA copying mechanism, as we have noted, cannot be absolutely correct, and the resultant errors are a source of variations in populations of organisms. Every individual organism cannot be protected by variations. That you all know that variations are very much required, necessary for the species. It is not important whether A organism is surviving or not, B organism is surviving or not. It is only important that that particular species should survive. Just recollect, here we took one example of bacterial colony. Out of 100 bacteria, due to temperature increase, 80 bacteria died. Okay, 20 could only survive, and they could survive because they were having heat resistant gene. By that they were able to survive the temperature, right? So these 20 here will again multiply, and again bacterial colony can be established. So here the focus is what it is on the species. Every individual organism cannot be protected by variation, but in a population, variations are useful for ensuring the survival of the species. It would make sense if organisms came up with reproductive modes that allowed more and more variations to be generated. Now, while DNA copying mechanisms are not absolutely accurate, as you all know, they are precise enough to make the generation of variation a fairly slow process. It is not so that drastic variations will take place and that organism will be able to survive. No. If variations are drastic, organism cannot survive, right? So it has to be less accurate only, minor changes. Each new variation is made in a DNA copy that already has variations accumulated from previous generations. We already have discussed that we do not know how many variations we are carrying. I give you the example of thalassemia patients also, right? Thus, two difficult individuals in the population would have quite different patterns of accumulated variations. Since all of these variations are in living individuals, it is assured that they do not have any really bad effects. Combining variations from two or more individuals would thus create new combinations of variants. Each combination would be novel combination, as you all know, since it would involve two different individuals. The sexual mode of reproduction incorporates such a process of combining DNA from two different individuals during reproduction. Now let's read from here. As discussed earlier, sexual reproduction involves two parents and gamete formation. As you know, gamete formation doesn't take place in asexual reproduction. Gametes are special cells which are formed after meiosis. You know the difference between mitosis and meiosis also. There are two types of gametes, the male and the female gamete. The number of chromosomes is haploid, that is they are having only one set of chromosomes because they are having half the number of chromosomes. When gametes fuse during fertilization, the number of chromosomes becomes diploid. That means one set will come from the male gamete and another set will come from the female gamete. This is important for maintaining the unique identity of a particular species which reproduces by sexual method. Just imagine if meiosis is not there, what will happen, right? If there is no reductional division, the amount of DNA will keep on increasing and we will have ample amount of DNA on this planet Earth. But that doesn't happen because we have a process meiosis in which the number of chromosomes are reduced to half. Half and half join to form one. In sexual reproduction, the offspring gets sets of genes from two different individuals. This leads to subtle variation through subsequent generations. These variations accumulate over thousands of generations and finally may give rise to a new species. This is how all complex organisms have evolved from a common ancestor. Okay. Now you can see in this slide, DNA replication is the process by which DNA makes a copy of itself. DNA replication happens during the S phase, synthesis phase. Regarding this, you are going to study in your 11th standard, G phase, G0 phase, S phase of the cell cycle. This is important because the daughter cells would need additional copies of the DNA. This we have discussed. Just recollect. The process of DNA replication is a foolproof process, yet some alterations do take place. These alterations may lead to some variations in the characters of the daughter cells, and that is required for survival, right? You can see in this slide DNA, can you see, which consists of millions of genes? Can you see? Yes. Now if you unwind the chromosome, right, chromosome which consists of DNA and protein, you will see this is solenoid formation and these are proteins. Can you see? DNA and proteins are multifolded. Yes. Which proteins? Histone proteins. Then here the same will be coiled to what? Coiled to form chromosomes. Can you see here? Homologous chromosomes. One chromosome has come from the paternal side, another chromosome has come from the maternal side. So what is happening here? That multicellular organisms have found one solution, right, that they have only half the number of chromosomes and half the amount of DNA, as we have discussed, as compared to non-reproductive body cells. Thus, when these germ cells from two individuals combine during sexual reproduction to form a new individual, it results in re-establishment of the number of chromosomes and the DNA content in the new generation, right? If the zygote is to grow and develop into an organism which has highly specialized tissues and organs, then it has to have sufficient stores of energy for doing this. In very simple organism, it is seen that two germ cells are not very different from one another or may even be similar, right? They may be isogametes, similar gametes. It's not necessary that they'll be having a male gamete and a female gamete. But as the body designs become more complex, the germ cells also specialized. One germ cell is large and contains food stores, while the other is smaller and likely to be motile. Motile means it is having ability to move, mobile, it's mobile. You can carry the mobile. Previously we used to have, phone, which we have to reach to the phone, the landlines one. So here we will be studying today sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So two gametes we have discussed, one gamete which is large in size, which stores food, and the other gamete which is small in size and which is motile, which is going to be transported. Okay. Now today we are going to study sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Okay. The reproductive parts of angiosperms are located in the flower, as you all know. The various parts are sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. Stamens and carpels are the reproductive parts of a flower which contain the germ cells. Which germ cells we are talking about? We are talking about here the male germ cell and the female germ cell. The flower can be unisexual, papaya, watermelon, when it contains either stamens or carpels. As you all know, flowers can be unisexual or it can be bisexual. So if flower is bisexual, that means it is having both stamens and carpels both. If it is unisexual, either it is having the male part or the female part. Now it is also known as androecium and gynoecium, and petals and sepals are known as calyx and corolla. Stamen is the male reproductive part and it produces pollen grains that are yellowish in color. Carpel is present in the center of a flower and is the female reproductive part. Please remember children, stamen is the male part, carpel is the female part. Now carpel is made up of three parts, okay, stigma, style and ovary. The swollen bottom part is the ovary, the middle elongated part is the style and the terminal part which may be sticky is the stigma. The ovary contains ovules and each ovule has an egg cell. Then we talk about the male cell. The male germ cell produced by pollen grain fuses with the female gamete present in the ovule. Now before this here, I want to discuss regarding the process, that's pollination. What is pollination? I will be asking you. Just be ready with the definition. Let's read this slide. Flower is a modified leaf which bears special organs and plays the role of reproductive system in the plant. A typical flower is composed of four distinct whorls, we call it as whorls as you have learned, calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. Okay? Androecium is the male part, gynoecium is the female part. I have added in the slide also what is calyx. The outermost whorl of the flower is called calyx. It is composed of green leaf-like structures called sepals. Then corolla, the second whorl of the flower is called corolla. It is composed of colorful leaf-like structures called petals. Petals are colorful so that insects and birds can be attracted, as you all know, to assist the flower in pollination. Then we have third whorl, androecium. It is composed of stamen. Stamen is made of slender stalk and anthers are on top of it. Anthers produce the pollen grains. Pollen grains are the male gametes. Gynoecium, this whorl is at the center of the flower. It is composed of a swollen base as I have read called ovary. A slender style stands upright on the ovary. It has a flat top called stigma. Ovules are inside the ovary and ovules are the female gametes. Let us discuss the actual process now. Sexual reproduction in flowering plants, you can see the stamen and pistil are the reproductive parts of the flower. You can see in this diagram, stamen is the male reproductive part. It produces pollen grains in the anther which contains the male germ cell. Pistil is the female reproductive part. It produces ovules in the ovary which contains the female germ cell, female gamete. You can see in the diagram, this is the anther. You all must have observed this anther consists of millions of pollen grains. This is the filament, okay, and this together is known as stamen. Then we have petal. Can you see colorful part is the petal. Then we have sepal, the green part. Then this is the receptacle, this is the peduncle, okay, the stalk. Then we have ovary here, you can see in the flower the ovary. Then center part is the style and then this is the stigma and together they are known as pistil. This is the female part of the flower. It is also known as gynoecium. Okay. Now let us talk about the process through which pollen grains are being transferred from one flower to another flower, right? Or it can be in the same flower. That process is known as pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is called pollination. It takes place by certain agents like wind, water or insects. If the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. And if it is transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower with the help of wind, water or insects, we call it as cross pollination, right? So here pollination takes place by insects, wind, water. So can you see self pollination here? This anther, right, which consists of pollen grains is falling on the stigma. That's why the height of the anther, the stamen will be more so that it can fall on the stigma. Many times they are loosely hanging also so that they can be carried by the wind. Many times, as you know, that the insects, they suck the flower juice, right, in return. What they are doing, they are carrying the pollen grains on their hairy legs and again they are going to another flower and the pollen grains fall on that flower, right? It falls on the stigma and then fertilization takes place. We call it as cross pollination. Can you see here? From this flower 1 and flower 2, it can be on the same plant or it can be on different plant. If it is within the flower, we call it as self pollination. If it is among two different flowers, we call it as cross pollination. Okay children, now let's find out what will happen when the pollen grains reach the stigma. After the pollen grain is transferred to the stigma, can you see in the diagram? Yes, it produces a pollen tube. Now as you all know, chemotropism you have learnt in the previous chapter, just recollect. In control and coordination chapter, pollen tube will be growing with the help of the sucrose that is being provided by the stigma, because stigma will check pollen pistil interaction takes place. Stigma will check, okay, these pollen grains are of my species or not, and if they are of the same species, it is going to provide a nutritive substance, that's this sucrose. Okay, so once it is absorbed, the pollen grains are going to develop pollen tube, which passes through the style and enters the ovary, and then finally it enters the ovule through an opening called micropyle. In the ovule, the male germ cell, male gamete, fuses with the female germ cell. Can you see this? These two are the polar nuclei, right? And above it there are three antipodals, three antipodals. The function of antipodal is still unknown. Then go down here, can you see egg? Next to egg we have two more cells called synergids. The function of synergid is also unknown. In the center, can you see these two polar nuclei? Yes. Next to synergids we have egg. Okay. Now this egg or the female germ cell. So once male gamete reaches here, it is going to fuse with the egg. This process is called fertilization. After fertilization, the zygote divides several times and forms the embryo, which then develops into the seed, and the ovary develops into the fruit, right? These all will be, is going to fall down. I am just reading from the textbook. After fertilization, the zygote divides several times to form an embryo within the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat and is gradually converted into a seed. Ovule is going to form seed and ovary is going to form a fruit. The ovary grows rapidly and ripens to form a fruit. Meanwhile, the petals, sepals, stamens, style and stigma may shrivel and fall off. Okay, this you must have observed. Have you ever observed any flower where this part is still present? Just recollect brinjal, the sepals are still present. The seed contains the future plant or embryo which develops into a seedling. Please all of you underline page number 135. Can you see this figure also? 8.8, germination of pollen on stigma. This is important diagram. The seed contains the future plant or embryo which develops into a seedling under appropriate conditions. This process is known as germination. Can you see this diagram? Figure 8.9. They've kept one chana dal. Can you see this? Not dal, sorry, chana. Now this chana here, it is kept in the shopkeeper's shop. Before that it is kept on the crop, in the farmer's warehouse. From there it is it is being purchased by the shopkeeper. From the shopkeeper it is being purchased by us. In our house also we keep it in the jars, and then one fine day we realize that we want to grow chana. At that time here we take certain seeds, we just give water and sunlight, and you will observe that white structures coming out. Now these whitish structures are two, plumule and radicle. Plumule, which is going to form the shoot system, and radicle, which is growing towards the ground, is going to form the root system. Okay, just see the diagram, and here the fleshy part which we consume is often called as cotyledon, where the food is being stored. So this developing embryo needs food that will be provided by the cotyledon. Can you see? So children, we have completed. In the next class we will be discussing reproduction in human beings.